Palouse.
Yes.
Is Bob Bot audible? Okay.
Bob Bot is audible. I was thinking about Bob Bot the entire time. And this movie really blew it with the stand up like men speech.
Man,
Yes.
they blew it in a lot of ways. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm really glad we got this suggestion, or Ray found it, or how did we come across this?
I mean, it's a major motion picture out
it's a major
as
motion
of this
picture.
month or last month in December.
Highly regarded, averaging 91% approval, like Metacritic reviewed.
Yeah.
Film. Wait. Let me just say. Welcome to The Empire Never Ended.
That's what I was waiting for.
With Boris, Fritz, and Ray.
Hey,
Hello.
Happy New Year's, guys.
Happy New Year's. Yeah.
Happy New
First show of 2025, which is shaping up to be a brilliant year.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And we started it apart, which is I think a good sign too. That's a
Is it?
or it's an omen of some kind, I think. What
Yeah,
else?
last year we were all together, and I think the product of that, the immediate pre-New Year's product of that was, pretty insane, if I'm
I
remembering correctly.
Actually
That
don't
was our-
remember, so I think you're probably...
Wasn't
me
that
neither.
our-
Yeah.
That wasn't
that
our-
was the fucking... that was the... Yeah, we got deep into the underworld.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah, much simpler this time. We just let David take over the show
Yep.
and make what I found to be a very touching montage
Me too.
about all of our japery. So thank you,
It was
David.
nice to go back to some of those highlights of the last year. I'd even forgotten some of our more witty moments.
Yeah, witty and foolish. We ride that
Yes.
line every day on this
We
show.
do.
We're just commuting between witty and foolish.
Stand up like men.
There we go. I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the
Okay.
first drop.
That's right.
Is this the third The Order movie?
This is the third The Order movie we've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There might
I'm
be
not sure if
more.
It's the third total.
Mm.
And it's been a couple years since we watched those other two. I was trying to think back on them. Both of them were
Betrayed.
pretty bad, no?
Brother. Well,
Um,
Betrayed was like, remember Betrayed was like it's Costa Gavros film. It was well done. It was just like a kind of, there's a lot of commonalities actually with Betrayed in
Yeah.
this film. We'll talk about, I'm sure. But the film this film that I'm referring to, that Ray's referring to, is The Order that came out in 2024 and got some wider release in December of 2024. But I think it was
Yeah.
a film festival film.
I mean, isn't it strange that this story is so inspiring to filmmakers? Because it's pretty like it's like a bunch of Nazis robbed some banks and killed a radio host. Like,
Is it or is it an indigenous resistance against modernism, Ray?
Well, it's definitely not that.
It's the white yeomanry.
Yeah.
Palouse.
Palouse.
Close.
I do understand why it is an attractive subject for filmmakers. That being said, it's surprising to me that none of these filmmakers had made a better film
Yes.
about
of
The
course,
Order,
yeah.
because there are so many kind of self-owned moments that you can do with them. And like, if you're trying to make a political point against them, which all of these films are in their own little ways, there's plenty of material there to do that. And yet they always kind of fall down and either go into kind of the extreme caricature stuff. And like, what was the one that was just like the kids saying the N-word?
Yeah, but that was
That caricature,
Betrayed.
like it's Betrayed. And okay, sure, that's probably real, but like it had a
It was
very
also
kind
the
of-
best scene of the movie. That's not
It was the best scene of the movie.
Do it too. They do it in the back and the butt.
Gross.
But it had a very like I don't know, sensationalist made for TV aspect of it there. at least in my memory. And this one is like, again, trying to prove a political point, but also making them look serious and kind of not addressing some of the political issues that they could have gotten into, at least.
I mean, they
my
probably
reading.
didn't want to. I mean, I think, I don't know. It is like everything, like always the tone of these movies is always wrong.
Yes.
Exactly.
This is a
Um,
great example of how not to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that depends on what you want to do. These people who made this movie obviously have different politics than us. So this is probably exactly what they wanted to do.
But imagine
Oh, but-
watching it. Okay,
Yeah.
I have to say though, I having it be like a sort of a liberal pro FBI sort of film is one thing, but watching it from the eyes of a Nazi, like
Yeah.
you would see this film as a gift. Like this is probably the coolest portrayal of your hero you're going to get. And I mean,
to a certain extent, but it's also like a bit like the way that Bob Matthews is portrayed here is definitely not as ridiculous as he was.
Yeah.
Starting with the speech that we made iconic, the "Stand Up Like Men" one.
Yeah.
This was
Right.
that
Stand up like
That-
men.
that same speech is featured in this film, and he doesn't sound as stupid as he does in reality at all.
Yes.
he doesn't even
Um,
say it. He doesn't even say the
he
line.
does
He
say
does.
it.
He does say it.
What? Oh,
Yeah.
I missed it completely.
Yeah,
God damn it.
that's I was like, it was a moment for me when he said it.
Yeah, it's in my
but-
notes as there it is.
Stand up like men and fight.
That's when he gives this when he like interrupts Richard Butler in his speech, and then he
Mhm.
gives that.
Oh, I
he hits-
remember.
He says that line.
Oh, I missed
But,
that line. So sad.
So, but you could do it. Like, I think liberals are always like, we don't know, we don't want to make them look like clowns because we want people to be scared of them. And there's the whole point of the film is to say how there are references to Trump. I didn't even see the text at the end of the film, and I got that they want to tell us that what these people were about is really happening now with Trump and everything. But you could like have a like if it. I'm not saying it should be exactly like that, but something like the film like Natural Born Killers or something like that. It has like this kind of a very violent, dark comedy tone
Yeah,
to it. Like
yeah.
something like that would be more. I think.
I
it
feel
would
like
be
those
better for
types
the-
of films are more effective for delivering that kind of political message than these kind of more serious ones.
Yeah.
In that, like, we'll get into it once we start summarizing the movie a bit, but their attempt to make Richard Butler some sort of like sinister Liberty Lobby Trump figure makes him into kind of good guy next to Bob
Well,
Matthews,
Yes.
which I
Well-
don't think is intended, but like, I don't know.
Well, I think the intention is to make him the worst guy because he's there to be saying like, stop doing that. We'll have Trump soon. He's basically is what he.
But
it's the-
if you're looking at it from sort of
Mm.
a perspective of like a right wing person who might not be all the way into
Yeah.
the order stuff, you'll be like, oh wow, this Richard Butler guy has a point.
yeah,
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And he comes off as kind of sympathetic if you're already looking at it from this kind of right wing angle,
No.
which kind of doesn't really go with the relationship that Aryan Nations and Bob Matthews and the Order had to one another.
Yeah.
It doesn't mention at all that in one of the. Actually, let's get there. We'll get there because Aryan
I just
Nations is
wanna-
a beneficiary of the Order's
Of course.
armed expropriation act.
I just had one more like kind of a general thing to say about the film that I don't like appreciate is that like one of the things they always fuck up is the one that we mentioned, like how they portray Nazis. But the other thing that like, a lot of these people love to do is to make these, whatever the topic is, they like to make these kind of quasi existentialist like cop dramas.
Yes.
Yes.
And this is like, I really hate that. I'm sick of like
It
looking
was
at
very
these
formulaic. This
complicated
plot.
cops.
Yeah.
And like they don't even say like why is this guy fucked up? Like he just is. And that's
It was
like-
totally unnecessary to
Yes.
reveal his like tortured background at all. Like it was just the
Yeah.
movie would have been fine without it.
Yeah.
And yes, it was irritating to see.
I looked up the actual guy that Jude Law was playing in this film, the actual agent, and he doesn't have this same gravitas that Jude Law brings to the role here. He's much more like, well, I moved out there and it was really nice, actually.
Do you notice
course.
that Jude Law's character in this movie kind of looks like the Serbian actor Lazar Ristovski?
Hey, I was watching this with a friend, and she said this exactly same
Okay, so it's not just me. I watched it, but when I came on, I was like, wait, I know that's Jude Law, but what?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they really love doing that. Like, like I've been watching the like David Simon shows since the 90s, and he's getting better at not doing that, but he's still doing that. Like I was watching in the 90s, the Homicide: Life on the Street, and that was the worst in terms of how he portrayed. It was literally like Pemberton is really like an existentialist philosopher, and Bayliss is like a Buddhist. Like, what the fuck is going on? These are cops. And then Wire, was a little bit better, but like still, it's like a really kind of. They're also, they are like more like just dumb cops there, but there's a lot of that as well. And then I think the one that he made more recently is like, what is this? We Own This City or something like that. It's more realistic. It's just like really corrupt, dumb, thugs.
Nailed it.
Of course, he has like the good cops there because he needs them, like who are like heroes and frustrated the system doesn't work and they want to help the people or whatever bullshit. But it's like less of the complicated cop.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this, I also had a feeling that in this film wanted to make with the music and with some of the way they shot some of the scenes, they wanted to have like a kind of a True Detective season 1 vibe to it.
I got a little bit of that too. Absolutely, yeah.
And they wanted a cop like that who's like dark, but it didn't really work. And it's,
lots of cigarettes, liquor, Yeah, he's a hard drinking FBI man who had really went through the rough times on assignment, and now he's out in Idaho. He's also making a life for himself out in the wilderness.
Thank you.
But it's him against Bob Matthews.
This is where like the framework I took away from this film was that at times I felt like it wanted to be a frontier piece, like a Western piece, where Bob Matthews and the Order occupy occasionally the role of the indigenous, like people left behind as like the modern world moves in. And I feel like there are certain scenes we'll get to where I think that was almost explicit, but it's not something that's like throughout the film, but I think it occupies several key moments in the film.
So it's like an inversion of the classic Western in that here the kind of indigenous.
He's the lawman. He's the new sheriff.
He's the new sheriff comes to town.
Except that the outlaws who play outlaws half the Western occasionally flip roles and become indigenous in other scenes in this Western. That's one of the ways I saw it. And I think it matters that the director and also the lead actors are Australian and English.
And British. Yeah.
And I feel like that gives some harmony to the Betrayal, which was also a sort of European view of the US. So they made, like, if you remember, like Mexicans were portrayed as like gypsies in camp and stuff like that. Like it was a strange amalgamated view. Well, this director, Justin Kurzel, he's done his share of like he's Australian. He's done like outback gang films and stuff like that. He also did an Assassin's Creed film, apparently. The much lauded filmmaker of Assassin's Creed and Macbeth. That's yes, but his original movie I haven't seen. His feature film is what do you call it? His first feature film, something called Snowtown, which was about these kind of cultish murders happening in Australia.
Yeah. I mean, I know about the real case. I don't think I've seen the movie.
Yeah. Well, it's supposed to be quite good. It's supposed to be quite violent, and this is sort of his thing: crime and violence, and hence you get more of a crime drama and an outlaw drama, right?
Right.
than a Nazi movie.
Well, I mean, the Snowtown murders had kind of a Nazi aspect to them, so it's kind of I can see why he would have been chosen for this, because that was a series of murders in Adelaide, maybe, that had these Nazi overtones. Then they primarily murdered gay people, gay men,
or people they thought were like
or
sexually
people that they
deviant or
thought were.
something.
Yeah.
And it had a very like, I don't know, it had that kind of vibe that like Chloe wanted the 098 to have, but it never really totally had it. They were sort of vibing.
Yeah, because these were like really, really brutal
Grotesque.
murders. Yeah.
But anyway, that's the kind of, those are the topics that he likes to tackle.
Yeah. And so, getting into this film, obviously The Order, the name speaks for itself. It's about Bob Matthews and The Order, not the first film cover this material, but the newest one. I shouldn't have to say this, but yes, there will be spoilers for this film. Although, if you know the story of The Order, and if you're, a longtime listener kind of pod, then you know how this ends.
They didn't stray from the historical path too much, although they did in some key important ways throughout the film that we'll get to.
And I'm not going to be like, I think it's important to point out where they deviated from the real story. Sometimes this is done in the interest of, producing a more coherent narrative, which is fine. This film is a separate text. It's a fictionalized version of the story, but there are also interesting exclusions, or, I guess some sort of either things they ignored or omitted deliberately, that kind of do have a political weight, maybe.
No, I think the same thing. Yeah, there's reasons for some of the ways they portray Bob's background, for instance.
Yeah, and some of the other like kind of supporting characters in the story.
Well, first though, do you want to just give us your 2 cents as our resident Bob Matthews and The Order expert on the show, having covered them not once but twice? Maybe a little quick review.
God damn it! I was.
You're trying to get out of it.
I was hoping you weren't going to do that to me.
We could do it together. I gave a listen recently to those eps, and often I forget that it was Bob Matthews himself that took us into the world of the TTRPG through some Stormfront contributor who wrote fan fiction about exactly the moment, isn't it, where this movie ends. So we had already written the sequel to this film long before this film was even filmed. How about that?
Yeah, God, I did forget that.
Game.
If you're new to this and you haven't listened to those episodes, go back and listen to the Order eps and our TTRPG sequel. No. I'm just saying, like, we did cover it years ago at this point. But I mean, the Order should, if you're not familiar with who they are, I mean, that's kind of the most successful American neo-Nazi paramilitary formation. Most famous for their like really high profile acts of killing Jewish shock jock Alan Berg, which is how this movie begins, but also more notably for their extremely successful bank robberies and armored car heists that yielded millions of dollars. I think the Ukiah, California armored car heist may still be the largest successful armored car heist in U.S. history. They came out with like over $3 million and pretty successfully distributed that money rather, quietly to basically fund some of the U.S.'s best known and longest lasting Nazi organizations. Like who all got it? National Alliance got
Bob Matthews got the hats manufactured for the National Alliance conventions,
among other things. I mean, National Alliance,
and also shit tons of money and land.
Yeah, shit tons of money and land.
But
Tom Metzger got some.
Yep.
Aryan Nations. Who knows who all.
Covenant Sword and Arm of the Lord.
For some reason, they call the group Aryan Nation and not Aryan Nations in this film.
I noticed
because there's only one nation, right?
Yeah, I think they didn't get. I mean, that's strange. Because it's not like a group based on Aryan nations. It's supposed to be that one. They have
Right.
a leader called Richard Butler. They have the
Yes.
same emblem and everything,
Yeah.
but they just got the name wrong.
Yeah.
The real order, of course, led by Bob Matthews, who dies, spoiler alert, in a fiery shootout on Whidbey Island, Washington in 1984. The order also produced some other very famous figures in the U.S. neo-Nazi scene, most notably David Lane, who was convicted for the murder of Alan Berg and is the progenitor of the 14 words.
Yes, and the 88 precepts, and is a creepy pedo.
Yes.
And of course, all of the things that all American Nazis seem.
Yes. Yeah. Or as this film would like you to think, the rural heartland, indigenous lifeways of the rural American heartland.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, I guess that's a pretty basic overview of the order and Bob Matthews. Bob Matthews, of course, this movie does get into his bio at the very end, but just real quick, he was, a nerd as a kid who joined the John Birch Society as a child.
Middle class. Parents had enough money to help him out when he needed it.
Yeah.
Love to drink milk. Yeah.
Love to drink milk and eat apple pie.
Monitor
Something
the
that
hallways.
that was sadly omitted from this movie because once you see that, you're like, okay, something's not right with this dude.
Well, I mean, he talked like this, too.
Talks like this. The actor portraying him, which is what is it?
About a boy.
Nicholas
Beast.
Holt.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it would be like way more scary if he was like that in the movie, like drinking milk, eating pies, and talking with that voice and like murdering people.
That always has been the scariest thing.
Yeah, that's the scariest part about it.
They always skip these.
Because then, that becomes, okay, he's the mild-mannered, very all-American boy, which is true, but there's a psychopathy to that all-American boy thing that this film kind of loses.
Horace, that's the American part. What do you... It's just boy then, without that bit.
No.
Because, this does show them as more of like the stereotype of like hard drinking, kind of country boys. Like, I don't know, like there's a few scenes just in the background, like when they're on the compound, you see liquor bottles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which I think if they were, gallons of milk would be a lot more upsetting.
It's very disturbing. And you know what movie did that right? And you got to give credit where it's due, but that would be Brotherhood of Murder with Billy Baldwin. They were the only of the three.
And the only ones that
got
picked
that
up on
part.
that part of Bob Matthews. Which is an important part of his character. How could you admit that?
And they showed it as a scary thing. If you recall in that scene in that film, they're sitting at a diner and Bob's like, 4 milks, and like the new guy's like, ha milk. And one of the big dudes is like,
Well, how about you do just like this man said and bring a round of milk and apple pie?
it was good.
It's the best part. It's a milk drinking villain. It's great.
But no, this guy just looks off into the distance, stares through people and is very charismatic and significantly taller than the original Bob.
Is that true? Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Bob was not known to be a big man.
No, I don't think so.
He was a little fella, I think.
He's certainly handsome here too, which I think
Bob was a good looking guy. Yeah, they got the haircut pretty good.
It's all the milk.
It's all that milk. That's right. Keeps his coat shiny.
So on the subject of drinking, the film opens. Yeah.
All right.
The film opens with like a montage of when it's not even a montage. It's just the opening credits. You hear clips from Alan Berg's show. Alan Berg was this 90s shock jock in Denver who kind of did a lot of 80s. Yeah. Sorry, 80s. Who would take a lot of Nazi callers onto his show and make fun of them and stuff
and like
that.
Christian fundamentalists and stuff.
Yeah. He would just have fun with those kinds of people.
Anti-Semites in general, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'd fuck with them.
Yeah. And as we cut to Alan Berg in the studio, who's played by Mark Maron.
Yeah, good choice, by the way.
Yeah, he does a pretty
Solid.
good job in the few times he appears. Him talking about like how all fanatics are too adept for the world, blah blah, too inept for the world. Sorry,
And that's why they have to take it out on everyone else.
and that's why they have to take it on everyone else. It cuts to a couple guys drinking liquor in a car, driving around, listening to the show. We find out that this is basically what David Lane,
Gary what's his name? Yarwood or something?
Yarborough,
and Walt. Poor Walt.
Yeah, so the film opens then with the murder of Walter West,
Yes.
who was an Aryan Nations member out there in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, who was murdered by the Order pretty early on. I think that was their first murder.
And their first slip up too, because I think people started chatting about that as well. If I'm not
They started
mistaken.
chatting about that, but as far as I know, they never found the body. And in this film is hinged upon the fact that they find his body. But
Yeah.
what I thought was interesting is that the murder of Walter West is pretty well known in those circles for its very kind of specific brand of brutality, and that is that they tried to kill him first with a sledgehammer,
That's right.
and then ended up shooting him after they'd been pounding him and he didn't die. In this
The
film,
fact of that really made me think, oh, okay, that's the film we're getting then. We're getting the cool, competent, operator view.
execution, Nazis instead of
More mob.
botched sledgehammer execution.
Yeah.
The film implies that he was a member of the Order who talked too much. Is
Yeah.
that how it happened?
No, so he was a member. He wasn't a member of the Order. He was an Aryan Nations dude who was known for being drunk as shit, running his mouth at the bar, kind of talking about the Order's activities, or the fact that like there were people that were starting to do this thing that became the Order.
Yeah.
And that's what they killed him for, which is, I guess.
But the film doesn't say he was a
relatively-
member because they say like, oh, maybe Bobby wants you to join. That's why we're going out there to the woods.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, they take him out into the woods as if they're going like night hunting, something that Bob wanted them to do.
I
And
thought
then
for
they
sure
shoot
they were going to do that betrayed shit where like there's like some poor fucking guy tied up out there and they hunt people. Do you remember that from the Costa Garos version?
Yes, damn.
Yeah, but they were going for historicity a lot more here than that one was. So
They were, but they got rid of the kind of cinematic killing of this guy with a
Yes.
sledgehammer.
and for a guy known for like brutal films and like not shying away from violence, I don't know.
And the only reason that that's also kind of important is that lived on in the mythos of like the
Mhm.
Order too. Like there was a
Mhm.
guy who I think he had like a nickname that came after that or something because of his use
What,
of the
the hammer?
sledgehammer. I think it was something like that. Yeah.
Well, sure.
Yeah, it's been a while since I looked at those notes, but yeah, I do remember that.
So we are then introduced to Jude Law, who
Right.
what's his character's name? He's playing FBI agent Terry Husk.
Yeah.
I don't know I don't think that's the actual name of the real dude.
No, I don't
trying
think it
to
is.
see.
It's not. There's a few names that are different in this film, and a few characters that are completely fictionalized.
Oh,
Terry Husk is not. Tom Martinez, for some reason, is given a different identity,
yeah.
but we'll get
He's
to that
Torres.
later. Yeah.
Tony Torres. But okay, so Jude Law, we already Ray did a great job already explaining exactly the archetype that Jude Law is performing here. The hard drinking loner guy. We don't know where his family is. He's all by himself in an empty, I guess, FBI office. He's there to cool down after having finished his work with the mob and the KKK. But he's he's a hard worker, and he immediately finds a file on his desk that has some stuff about the Aryan Nations and Richard Butler himself named right there on his desk.
And part of this kind of true detective persona in like showing him and like the establishing shots is you get this beautiful scenery of what's supposed to be like Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. But then you see him like he first like walks into a bar, right?
Mhm.
And he's like, and it's like this smoky locals only kind of bar, and there's a white power poster behind the bar and stuff. So at this, like, until you see him in the FBI office, you're not sure if he's like a good guy or a bad guy.
Yeah. I want to give a compliment to Jude Law here for his gruff American accent. There was a moment that I finally forgot it was like Jude Law, and that, that's good. That's what you want.
That is always the dream of the British actor playing the American role, is that they can just nail a solid, neutral American of some sort.
No rush, but when you guys coming out, I thought maybe a week, 2 weeks. But you should see the landscape is, well, like they said, it's really something.
I will give it to like Kate Winslet, who recently did in the last few years or whatever, that one cop show where she did she tried to do a Philly accent or whatever.
Oh, how'd it go?
And it actually worked out better. British actors do have a hard time doing weird regional American accents, just like they say that Americans can never do British. It can never go the other way around because they'll never master a whatever. East, whatever the fuck, regional accent. And then
tell that to David
British,
Myatt.
Yeah, get a British actor to talk like a dude
standard,
like a white dude from Baltimore or something. Right. It's gonna be a lot more challenging for them.
Well, they did it in The Wire. They did it.
No, because the British characters in The Wire all had like pretty neutral American accents. Mm. Even Idris Elba had like a neutral,
or they would default New
compared
York,
to like
right.
Yeah, or compared to like the people that were doing both like white and black Baltimore accents.
Yeah.
You could tell. Anyway, Jude Law does a decent job here. And I will say the cinematography in this movie is great. I'll give it that. It looks amazing. The set design is good. Those bars do look like how you'd imagine Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to look in 1980s.
It's basically like Assassin's Creed Idaho. It looks, I see why they got him to do the film.
Yeah. But,
we don't stay with Jude Law for long. We are sent pretty quickly to Spokane, Washington, 1983. As
Spokane,
like Coke can. We were,
we're reprimanded for this early on.
Reprimanded.
For lack of knowledge of.
Stand up like Spokane.
Yes.
Spokane. That's the plural when there's more than one of them. So we're in Spokane, and they are waiting for a bomb to go off somewhere, and it won't go off. And we find out that it's for a bank job, and they rush in, and it's a pretty energetic scene. Like there's a lot of force, there's a lot of dynamism and energy and shouting. While actually shouting is like a common theme in this film. A lot of shouting. Yeah. Not even in bank robberies, sometimes in meetings. And they pull off a pretty good bank robbery. No one dies.
Right. It's an energetic scene. It's also where we see Bob Matthews for the first time. Again,
that's right.
Played by Nicholas Hoult.
Yes. If you're having a hard time picturing Nicholas Hoult in your head, who is that guy? He was. Wait a minute.
Another British actor.
He was Beast in X-Men First Class. He was the little kid in About a Boy with one of the Hughes, Grant, I think.
Was he also Tolkien in the Tolkien biographical movie?
Oh, maybe.
I didn't watch that film, but
yes, he did.
All right, there you go. Nice.
And hilariously, for the agenda of this film, he's born in a place called Wokingham.
Wokingham. No, that's perfect. Perfect. Excellent. He's being tapped to play Lex Luthor apparently soon. Mm. Well, anyway, joining the other child actor that has now turned into an American for Nazi films, which is of course Harry Potter. What's his fucking name? Another British child star.
A New Year's film for us.
There you go. Yeah, it's they're on the path. So anyway, where the fuck are we? Bomb doesn't go off. They do a good operation, but a die pack goes off. But it's more of a, I don't know. You think it's a gunshot, and it looks like blood, but it's not. Yeah. All right. But importantly, covered in red dye, we see Zilla here, his second wife, yes, or partner. I'm not sure. Well,
mistress.
Zilla is here not portrayed as a child, as she was in
She doesn't
betrayed.
not look like
She's young, but she's not a kid like she was in that trailer with the Betrayed. Yeah.
In fact, Fritz, it was not betrayed but brotherhood of murder.
I have to say, one person I did miss in this film is the mother of Zilla.
Zilla's mother. I know, such a perfect character for this film, for
I
any
agree.
film rather.
I agree. Yeah.
So as a reminder, in real life, Bob Matthews was married to Debbie Matthews, who they had an adopted child together. She was unable to carry a pregnancy. To term, I think, was the issue that they had, and he ended up later shacking up with this young. Was she a child when they met? I can't remember in real life now.
We had this. I remember we went over this because we were pretty surprised by how they portrayed him in Betrayed.
Right.
She was an adult, if I recall. I don't know about when they met, but at least at the time when their relationship is recorded. It's
Zilla is his mistress. They did have a kid together, but interestingly, in real life, Zilla's mother kind of played an important role in this in some of the Order's activities, and she was really kind of with the movement.
She scouted the Alan Berg murder, if I'm not mistaken.
She did and she did the design for their logo, right? And that I think later got turned into the medallion. Again, it's been a couple years, so
I think,
but she was an important character. I think it would have been, kind of great to include her in the movie. Obviously,
but
they can't have everything. But
they didn't. I feel like the women in the Order got a really short shrift here in general. Overall, Zilla was, I think, much more active than she was portrayed here. For one,
yeah. Well, women were sidelined in the movement, and when they show their kind of oath ceremony is relatively accurate as to how it happened, except I think women weren't allowed in the building at all.
No, you're
they were
right.
supposed to be in the house, and they are
You're right.
on the outside of the barn looking in the film portrayal.
But Zilla was a believer, though. I mean, she was
Zilla and her mom were like the two, you could say, two women in not members of the Order, but in the general who were like members who were kind of part of the movement, even though they couldn't be official members.
Yeah. Because it's a brotherhood. It's the Bruderschweiger.
Yeah, it's the Bruderschweiger.
The silent brotherhood.
I think the casting for Zilla, who's played by Odessa Young, was pretty good. I think she does a good job in this role, and it's kind of how I imagine Zilla to look based on some of the descriptions. So yeah, we're kind of jumping around. The film jumps around to what is supposed to be present day, which is or the past, I guess. Jude Law's character coming and establishing himself in town, and then cuts to some of the Order's more famous activities.
Well, it is chronological. It's not jumping back and forth, though.
This jumps ahead a little bit, right?
It jumps ahead. I don't think it ever goes backwards, though. Thankfully.
No, I guess it doesn't go backwards. Yeah, it goes.
But it's a bit choppy. But you gotta see years.
No, it's good. It's I don't think it's ineffective in any way. I think it's generally the story is told in a pretty good way.
And that's when Jack goes to meet the police in the town, right? When Jude Law, goes to meet the police. The sheriff seems a little cagey about talking about the white power stuff. About talking about
he's like
Richard
the
Butler.
only laws that are broken here, the fishing without a license, or
Jude mentions not to poke the bear, that kind of thing. But there's this other guy, Jamie. Jamie's a good boy. He's a good boy, and he says that he could take him out to the Hayden Lake compound, which I think they did a great job making.
Yeah, I was going to say, the Aryan Nations compound is kind of how I imagined it to look.
It was a very theme parky moment for me. It was like, ooh, here we are. We're going to the part of the ride where you get to,
and right before Deputy Bowen takes him there,
Nazis.
He introduces Jude Law's character to the fact that there is something going on in town that is more serious than the Aryan Nations.
Right.
Because, Jude Law's poking around, but he's asking about Aryan Nations. He's asking about, that kind of stuff.
He's keeping busy, but he's not really believing that there's a serious, immediate terrorist threat. Right.
Because he's still this kind of old school FBI attitude. I guess this is what he's supposed to be representing. Where like, you know, Deputy Bowen's like, listen, we're getting all these reports. There was a bomb that went off in a synagogue in Boise. There are guys forging U.S. Money, currency, U.S. dollars. And Jude Law says something like, in my experience, hate groups don't rob banks. And then, Deputy Bowen's like, well, what if it's different this time?
Just one thing about Jude Law being old school FBI. Like the film is like set in the 80s. It kind of looks very like contemporary. Didn't have a lot of like, it didn't seem to me like it's a period film or something like that, which is fine. I prefer than that, like having 80s music all the time in films set in 80s and so on. It was okay.
Well, it would just be Twin Peaks then if they did that.
Well, yeah, okay, but that was filmed in the like late 80s, no?
Yes.
But there's like one detail that made me think about him, how old he is and so on, is that like in the part of the movie that's set in 84, he says to the young cop, I've been doing this job for 26 years, which means that he became a Fed in 1958. So that made me think, oh, yeah, this is a really old guy. Yeah.
So he's old. He's like, HUAC old school.
Yeah.
All right. Nice.
Yeah, he's saying, in my experience, hate groups don't rob banks. They assist the FBI or something.
Well, listen, okay.
Yes.
It's funny you should mention that
They
too,
hunt
because
communists.
there's a second institutional misunderstanding about the relationship of certain organizations to American fascists, and that is when he puts down the Marines lighter on the desk, right? He gives a guy a lighter, takes a light, but leaves his lighter. It says U.S. Marine Corps on it, prompting the good cop to get up and follow him out the door. Now, we don't know yet that this guy's the good cop. I obviously thought this was a trap. He's like, well, I know that ex-military tend to join these groups, so I'm going to leave out a little breadcrumb and see what I catch. But of course, all it was a virtue signal for this young boy to come and follow him out and be like, you must be a good man.
Yeah.
And that's how they get on.
Deputy Bowen takes Jude Law to... Oh, I just call him Deputy Bowen.
That's fine. I called him Jamie, so I just don't... Well, he's the same guy.
Yeah, he's the same guy. He takes Jude Law out to the Aryan Nations compound, which, like you said, Fritz, I think looks great.
Epcot Center quality.
Yeah, and we get introduced to Dick Butt.
Yes, we do. And boy, was I disappointed. I wanted to see fucking Dune levels of like debaucherous falling apart.
I was thinking about this. So, if you're a new listener and you don't know why we're calling Richard Butler, the leader of the Aryan Nations, Dick Butt, there are some episodes that can
it's not a huge puzzle,
It's not a huge puzzle.
It's our Labyrinthus Mythologicus. They'll never.
But you might be surprised as to how our portrayal of Richard Butler compares to this one in the film.
Well, Boris, we don't have to let them imagine.
You have the magic of editing.
No, well, yes, but there will come a point, a scene that Ray and I agree is very important to the film that we're going to have to discuss, and I think we should use that as a moment to compare these different portrayals, these different filmic representations of Dick Butt and Bobby.
Yeah,
but we'll get there. All right, so the police are now around, and they're not even like the bad guys ever, which is just, why even include them,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I did skip up a little bit to him going to the Aryan Nations compound.
No, because what's his name drives him out there, right?
I think that the film wants us to think that they are the bad guys. Like, I think the point of the movie is to, like, they, exactly because they don't look so bad is what makes them dangerous. Is, I think, the message of the film. Is like, they're more, they're not extremists, but
wait, no, I mean the cops. The cops look like bad guys. Like, they're not even involved. You know what I mean? Like, there's a whole other storyline that you could flesh out here where there's like, a deep relationship of fascist militias to local policing.
Yeah.
But it would completely disrupt the basis of this entire film, which is, what, law and order above all?
You get this idea that like the caginess that the sheriff has isn't because he's like a Nazi, but because like, you know, whatever, he doesn't take this kind of thing seriously because that's just a bunch of wackos or whatever.
This is the film, like that's the political agenda of the film. Like the problem is that people don't take these people seriously. They think they're just a bunch of clowns, but look at it, we have now a fascist president. I think.
So one important thing that happened before Bowen and Jude Law go to the Aryan Nations compound is that, you know, through Bowen's like high school, you know, he's a local and he knew Walter West and he knows his wife through his like from high school, through his like, you know, towny high school connections. He's able to go to meet Walter's wife and they do a good cop, bad cop thing. And they eventually, as a result, get the information as to like where Walter was last seen. They immediately find his body. Again, this doesn't happen in real life. But this is like convenient for the narrative. So they have like a body, they know something serious. And that's what they go to the Aryan Nations compound with, right?
I also would like to point out that leading up to that point, we also have a brief scene of Bobby at home with his kids, with Debbie, right? Because we're introduced, interestingly enough, and it's a good device, to Zilla first. So any viewers who don't know are left to believe that this is his, you know, main squeeze. And then suddenly they meet his much more normal looking family. He has an even more suburban life somewhere. And in that time, we see him reading the Turner Diaries to his child as a bedtime story. But it's like, I don't actually recognize the line. I'm sure it's in there, but I was wondering why they picked that one and not the parts where it was like, nature took her course, you know, or like she was unusually attractive even as a young child, like with none of that part's in there, you know? But this is one, you know, and it made me kind of miss the little girl from Betrayed. That was just like stringing together slurs. But here they make the Turner Diary sound like it's literature, which it is certainly not. Certainly not. It's a collection of fictional journal entries, and if you want to count that, fine. But it doesn't read like, you know, fucking.
It's bad Nicholas, even in the realm of fashfic.
Yes, yeah. So I was surprised that they found a part where they could read it like a bedtime story, and then later on, Dick Butt himself refers to it as being for the children, much
for
like
the children. Yeah. So yeah, Richard Butler at the Aryan Nations compound, you know, greets the Fed and the cop and is, you know, answers some questions, and seems to be somewhat disturbed when they show the body of Walter West, a picture of the body of Walter West to him. He says that, like, you know, the two suspects that they have were part of the Aryan Nations, but they kicked them out for, you know, counterfeiting money and being bad.
Which is interesting, no? Because, first of all, yes, of course, counterfeiting money was a big part of the order, but it also didn't super work out for them. But I don't think it had anything to do with Aryan Nations printing presses, because they're basically would be admitting they have printers that can print counterfeit money, because that's not just like a normal printer, you know?
Yeah.
Like you need like a fake money printer. So him being like, they were using our fake money printers to a Fed.
Yeah, and there's something about, you know, the counterfeit currency actually helped bring them down.
Well, that got Tom Martinez.
Into trouble, who they immediately introduce after this scene. And Tom Martinez in this film is named
Tony Torres.
Tony Torres. And Tom Martinez in real life was a National Alliance member from Philly who would he was kind of selected to be the Order's like East Coast guy.
Yeah.
For a while, and particularly in circulating counterfeit currency out in, you know, the East Coast, for which he got caught and ended up becoming a federal snitch. And he becomes a snitch in this film too. But I guess that's probably why they changed his name, because he's like a good guy.
I think that's why I think a lot of the police are also, they have fictionalized names too. So I guess. Yeah,
but he's the only like one of these, you know, Order people that has a fictionalized name.
Yeah. He's redeemed himself. He's been denazified because of his tell-all. which is part of that is included in this film, right? Where
Right.
he expresses his reasons why he's become a fascist, a Nazi, and they basically repeat the same story that the actual Tom Martinez says in his story, which is whatever, whites can't get a job around here, plus some like racial violence against his family or something like this, friend, I guess. But it's,
I mean,
And
like, a black person killed his friend, I guess, or something like that.
And to point out that this was very much Tom's narrative about why he became a Nazi. It's not substantiated as far as I recall.
Yeah. And in the film, just as in real life, he did have to tell everybody that he's not in fact Mexican, that he's of Spanish ancestry, and that is a challenge that Tom Martinez faced in real life.
Exactly.
Because these people are idiots.
Yeah. All right.
So now we're getting to the baby oath scene.
Let's get a baby. They get a baby like they do. This is always my favorite. Apart from the milk and apple pie, which is a huge omission here, I would never have forgiven them if they didn't include the baby ritual.
They had to.
I was wondering. I was kind of afraid they would, because there are lines when Bob says things like, we're not for all this ritual stuff. Like, I think he mentions this in the context of Dick Butt or something. But no, they do. They get the baby. They swear the loath of oilty.
Yes.
And here's a clip of it.
As a free Aryan man, hereby swear an unrelenting oath upon the children in the wombs of our wives to join together with those brothers in this circle. For we are now in a full state of war and will not lay down our weapons until we have driven the enemy into the sea. It is time to reclaim the land which was promised to our fathers, and through our blood and his will, let it become the land of our children to be.
I do have extensive notes here that have clips marked. So occasionally I'll say something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, this moment is in real life when they founded the Silent Brotherhood,
right?
And it was Bob Matthews, David Lane, some other Aryan Nations dudes like Dan Bauer, some other Bruce Pierce, of course, who also plays a role in this film, and was with David Lane when they killed Alan Berg.
No relation to William Luther. Yes.
So yeah, they made a circle of candles, and they got one of them to bring their baby daughter. They put the baby on the table surrounded by candles, and then
normal shit. Yeah. What you do?
And
we've all been baptized.
Yes. And the men were inside and the women weren't. In the film though, the women are standing outside of the barn and looking in. I don't think that's very accurate. And then they give their Aryan oath, which in our episode we read. And so we'll spare you that now, because it's long and
we already joined. You don't have to do it twice.
Joined.
We're good. We're good for another, I think, 2 years.
Yeah. It hasn't expired yet.
No.
They don't even do the full oath.
Nah,
come on, guys.
It's so fucking long.
It's so long.
Come on.
So many. I'm an Aryan warrior. That kind of shit.
And this is when, around this time, Jamie ate the good cop, right? The nice boy. He is visited, I think, by an ally of Dick Butt, who drops off the Turner Diaries, which they had seen at the Aryan Nations compound. And there it has the address of Gary Yarborough himself. So, I kind of liked this. I kind of like this only because, Dick Butt, they didn't say it in the film, but if you already go into the film kind of knowing that Dick Butt was probably a massive informant and certainly had some relationships, this movie doesn't fight that image at all. He's instantly working with the FBI. He's very cordial with them.
So we've heard strays from your church are splintering off, forming their own groups, and they're getting powerful.
And you're worried Gary and Bruce are responsible?
Well, if I were you, I'd be worried too, because they get a taste for power. Get control of your strays, or this won't be your flock anymore.
I don't know where they are, but if I hear, I will call.
But I don't think that was meant to be a slight on him in the way that maybe it came off. I don't know. What do you think about his relationship to the FBI? I felt it had the undertones of almost being like an informant or of being an informant.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well, but I don't know. And maybe it's just, I mean, it's kind of a tricky question because I don't know how much the authors of this film know about how these groups function.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like, I think some of the things they kind of maybe accidentally got right, but without trying to say what it implies, actually.
I think you're right.
Like, I think that a lot of these people are like informants or would like to be, or like they hope they will find like similar minded people among the feds, which often is true.
Yeah.
But and that they act in a similar way like these people did here. But I don't think that's what they wanted us to think.
You tell them, Ray.
Yeah. And they probably wouldn't like I think they would be friendly, but probably not snitching on the other guys like these people did.
No, no. This is the what kind of threw me off a little bit is that the film is trying to develop some sort of tension between Richard Butler and the Order, which did not really exist or didn't exist in the way that they're portraying here. In that, again, like I said at the top of the show, the Aryan nations were one of the main beneficiaries of the Order's bank robberies, and they had like overlapping membership almost completely, including, from Bob Matthews on down. Bob Matthews was, moved to the area from his, original home in the Southwest. He became involved with the Aryan nations. He was doing security stuff for them. And he maintained this relationship with them. So what the film is trying to do here is kind of show you the two sides of the extreme right in America or whatever. One is this armed militant loonies, and the other is like the sinister dick butt.
Yeah. And he wasn't, exactly as you said, like they portray him as he's like Liberty Lobby, which he wasn't.
Right,
like,
at all.
He was like a very openly Nazi guy who, like a loser, when he was old and dying, organized like marches of Nazi skinhead, is what he was doing. Like, so,
Yeah, I mean, this is what they were doing even in the 80s, their events would, they were just Nazis. But the way that the film portrays him here, and this is a scene that happens right after, we are introduced to Tom and the baby oath scene and all that, is like this meeting between Richard Butler and Bob Matthews, where Richard Butler warns Bob about playing with fire, not attracting too much attention from the FBI, this, that, and the other thing, which is not really how that went down.
Well, we are maybe a tiny bit ahead of my notes, but I think we should expand on that discussion then, since we brought it up, because it's key. So I think what I'm gonna do is play. It's just a couple minutes, but there's this one confrontation where Dick Butt says something that kind of reveals a lot about the politics of the film, and then maybe after that, Boris and I can do the true Dick Butt and Bobby version of that scene.
I don't know if I can do. I don't know if I could do a Richard Butler now.
Yeah, but if not now, then when? Boris is my.
But I haven't. I don't remember. It's a very particular mindset to get into for that. Inverted swastika.
That's it. You found it. It wasn't that hard to do.
No, it just had to trail off periodically, right?
He trails off. He's dying.
Almost like not even sleeping, but like half in a coma or something like that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. He slurs words, so you can't really understand what they are. Yeah, and then rises up every once in a while. Right. Like, it's Biden, basically.
It is. It's a Nazi. It's a Nazi Biden.
But before that, let's please explain, please, Ray, the significance of this scene.
Well, so it's an interesting scene. Like it's almost like a kind of a scene out of a mob movie. It's like
definitely
two crews who have a conflict, have a meeting in the middle of nowhere, like they park their cars, exit the cars, and then they meet in the middle of a country road, something like that. You have this, I guess, some kind of a negotiation.
Yeah, after the FBI kind of pressed Dick Butt a little.
Yeah. And okay, so and in the scene we know that Butler is much closer to Matthews than he said to the feds. Like he obviously knows that they killed that guy who talked too much, and he doesn't have like some objection to it. But he says it's dangerous because feds know about it. They found the body and so on. And basically, he gives like advice or tries to put some pressure on Matthews to stop with the militant terrorist activities, not from some kind of a moral or even like political standpoint, but from like a pragmatic one. Like it's you are getting too much attention on you, and this is like detrimental to our like long game that we play, which of course has nothing to do with reality, what the Butler alienations were about. But
yeah,
supposedly he has this political plan, Richard Butler does, and he says something like, in 10 years we'll have like people in the Congress, Senate, and so on, and you should stop doing that. And then Matthews gets like kind of a threatening tone towards Butler and says like, or what? Like what?
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
I mean, we gotta play it out in full.
And also, just one thing that's important there, that at the end we see Bob Matthews give a kind of a head signal or something like that towards someone in the distance, and then we see that another order guy has a gun pointed at Richard Butler the whole time.
Yeah, and that's absolute horseshit.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's more of a coup, right? Is kind of the vibe. There can only be one, like the Highlander, which is exactly what that Stormfront guy wrote in his fanfic of the Bob Matthews story.
Yeah, and that's also like something that is completely tied to the scene of Butler talking with the feds, because Jude Law tells him something like, "You better help us because this guy Bob Matthews, he will take your flock away from you," something like that. He will be the the more charismatic Nazi doing actually what you're talking about, and so it's in your interest to betray him because you will lose your Church of Jesus Christ Christian.
Yes. Yeah. He does say, I think he says exactly, get your flock in order. Something like that.
Son, I've warned you before. You are playing with fire. Robert, you
have a gift. A voice. Thank you, sir. Don't go down this path. We're not thieves. Drawing too much attention. From whom? FBI, Bobby. They found Walter's body. We seek the same goals. Inverted swastika. In 10 years, we'll have members in the Congress, the Senate. That's how you make change. Progress takes time.
Well, that's your problem. You're running out of time, and you've got nothing to show for it. Nothing. You preach racial economics. We live it. I'm not going to be you.
Stand down, Robert.
No, I'm going to stand up like man.
That'll do.
You had a little bit of a. It was a little bit of a Kermit the Frog there for.
Well, I feel like he's Kermity. It's just no. We've got over this before. Bob, Jordan Peterson, Kermit, and Lucky Lindy are one voice with a different subtext. You see, it's about the lines I'm not saying.
It's true. I have to go back at some point and listen to Richard. I felt like that was one of my best performances.
For sure, yeah.
But I also remember that we recorded that at like 3 a.m.
and trashed.
Yeah. I think I was also sick because I think the coughing that I did in it was real.
It was real, yeah. That's the thing. It's a method issue, is it?
It was a method issue.
I should have had you walking around this morning preaching to people to warm up.
Yeah.
Well, the Bible says.
Yeah, this dude did much more together than
much
the
more
Richard
composed.
that we love.
Although,
Yeah.
you know, I think that in terms of like looking like a younger version of the Richard
Yes.
Butler that we're familiar,
At his
it's
prime.
pretty good. And the
Yeah.
guy did a relatively good job. I mean,
Yeah.
he did a good job. It's just not. It's not Richard Butler.
Yeah.
Right.
In the real Richard Butler, he does a good job portraying what this film says is, you know, what Richard Butler should be like. But it's not
Yes,
what
exactly.
Richard Butler's actually like.
Although I thought they did an okay job, maybe introducing people to like the basic ideas of Christian identity. I mean, he pretty much did have a line that said something like "Your race is your religion." He didn't say that, but you know, that was the thing. What is this book? This book is a story of your race, kind of messaging. So it wasn't too bad.
Yeah.
Except that, of course, they were the non-terrorists, which was, like we've said, nuts. But also, did you notice that at this scene, maybe I don't really know where we are at this point, but I guess sometime after that meeting, there was another confrontation where they're in the church and Dick Butt is about to start his sermon, and Bob stands before them and confronts him and gives a version of the speech he gave to the National Alliance.
Yeah,
That's a bit
but
after,
it's a bit after, and it is supposed to be at the National Alliance convention.
It says so on the wall. Yeah,
it says so on the wall.
Yeah,
but before that, we get to right after that scene with the confrontation between Bob Matthews and Richard Butler.
Yeah,
we cut up again to 1984 to the FBI raiding the house of Gary Yarborough.
Right.
Now, that was a very important, pivotal moment in the real story of the Order, for kind of hilarious reasons, if you remember.
Yeah, kind of. I remember them getting caught for silly things from time to time.
So Yarborough was the first of them to get raided, and despite the fact that like this film portrays them in this way, and they portrayed themselves in this way of being like the super hyper organized militia that took like security culture seriously. They're ops. They have, code names, and they're using walkie-talkies and the whole thing. One of the main reasons that they were able to go down as fast as they did is that fucking Gary Yarborough, for example, didn't get rid of the murder weapon that they used to kill Alan Berg. So the MAC-10 that they killed Alan Berg with was also used, I think, in one of the robberies. And he just took it home back to his mom's house where he lived, along with like, in a room full of like explosives, pictures of Hitler and Jesus and all this stuff. So when the FBI raided his crib, they just had all this shit there, including the murder weapon.
It's the story of the Order. It's you either keep your gun at the wrong time or you drop your gun at the wrong time. That's the bookend.
So yeah, like for the most serious kind of operators, Gary, they couldn't even get rid of the murder weapon. You just did a high profile murder.
But
you
importantly,
took the MAC-10 home. It's not like they had a shortage of access to guns.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ridiculous
That's kind of
at this point. At this point in the story, they have millions of dollars.
Yeah, they had like fucking like engine block busting high powered sniper rifles and shit.
I mean, they had C4.
Yes. Yes.
Shit.
Exactly. But in this, they ended up with they find explosives right in Gary Yarborough's apartment in this version.
Yeah,
and I think there's some sort of grenade rigging. They showed it kind of briefly, but it's too late in this story because in this version, the porn theater bombing that does in fact occur right as a distraction for the armed heist. In this version, it happens all on the same day. Fair enough, but they did a similar thing that they did in a previous filmic depiction of this moment, which is they included the implication of heavy casualties. You know what I mean? Like the bomb is huge, and there are people still in the theater shown that would have certainly been killed, but I think in reality, no one actually got killed in this bombing. Yeah,
and so I mean, this. Other than that, it's a relatively true to life depiction of how that robbery went down.
Except
this is the first Seattle Brinks robbery. This is their first like armored car heist.
Oh yeah,
where,
that is the first one, right? You're right.
Yeah, so in this they did do a bombing of a porn theater to distract the police while they pulled off this heist, and they in real life and in the film they pulled off the armored car heist and got $250,000, which is a lot of money.
Yes,
but in this film, in the film version, and I don't think, according to what I remember reading, the FBI got nearly as close to catching them as they did in the film. In this, like Jude Law, like has like a stand, like Bob Matthews basically stands down from killing Jude Law.
Well, yes, exactly. There's that mutual. They build a relationship through meaningful glances at tense moments where they're, Bob knows this guy's face now, but he doesn't know Bob's face, which allows what I think is the most offensive scene in this movie.
The dumbest film, the scene in the film, yeah.
The deer thing?
Yeah.
That thing to me was where it just tipped over into being like practically like a fucking frontier colonial fantasy with very strange interpretations of how white people fit into that environment. Where
you're right, it's an extremely Western scene
because we have our lone FBI agent right now.
Well, okay, so wait. Let's situate the scene first.
Please go on.
So the order pulls off successfully this armored car heist. Jude Law almost gets killed by Bob Matthews,
right?
Who's masked but doesn't shoot him, and whatever. And then he's really frustrated by the fact that he blew it.
His partner fucked up by not backing him up.
His partner fucked up. This is what's her name is like Joanne Carney, FBI agent. She's his superior, but clearly is like a young hotshot in some ways. Like, he's definitely like the veteran here.
Yeah. Well, importantly too, she's also like a woman of color in a position of authority over him in a kind of a ostensibly anti-fascist whatever operation, which is very debatable here.
And this is a made up character.
Definitely, yes.
And right wingers, of course, are all automatically offended that she was included in this as like a DEI whatever. I think it is an ideological move for sure because in 1984, I don't know. It is definitely showing like a strong woman of color in a position of authority.
Who is the only person who actually seems to really sense the politics of the situation and have emotional reactions to those politics. So she gets disgusted, and she'll express it where everybody else is like, they're breaking the law.
Yeah.
Can't have this.
I'm not sure how accurate of a portrayal this is for this time period.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the FBI are like the good guys here. So obviously, this is the choice that they made. But yeah, so Jude Law's having a really hard time. They're drinking, smoking heavily, as in every Hollywood movie when somebody, cigarettes are always shown that way. You have to smoke hard when times are rough. And so then Jude Law's character goes to commune with nature after this.
Exactly. And he takes out a rifle, heads out into the woods. He's got his gear on. And he's looking everything of the Friedrich Casper painting of the man in the wilderness, and he's there in the mountains and stream, and he spies a buck. And as he lifts up his rifle to sort of, you think he's going to shoot the buck, somebody else behind him, none other than Bobby Matthews himself, is lifting up a rifle on Jude Law. But Bobby Matthews, neither of them decide to shoot, which is a theme that they will continue now. We had already a scene in the parking lot where Bob had him dead to rights, didn't shoot him. Now again, Bob has him dead to rights, but much like the mighty elk, Bob decides not to shoot him. And they have a conversation.
And this does remind me actually of a scene straight out of Western. I didn't really think about it that much until you mentioned it.
Bob's the native. Bob's the native watching from the what do you call them? Butts.
Yes. Because he's clearly has a lay of the land, right?
Yes.
And he's in has the high ground in the woods, behind a rock. It's very much
and Jude's the new sheriff,
portrayed,
he's there representing the state, and they're kind of encroaching further into the indigenous lifeways of these poor indigenous whites.
Yeah, Matt, I'm agreeing with your read here more and more.
Why, thank you.
Yeah, but they do have a conversation at this point. Jude Law doesn't know that he's talking to Bob Matthews.
Right. Yeah. Although, with so many meaningful glances getting shot back and forth like a t-shirt cannon in this movie, you never really know who knows anything here. Because there's moments, where Jude gives a look that could be like, is that the guy that, pointed a gun at me? Or it could be like, man, that guy looks really good in that sweater. It could be anything.
Yeah.
You don't know. These are men.
Yes.
They hide their feelings.
Yes. And then, of course, we get treated to the National Alliance Convention.
Right.
And the Stand Up Like Men speech.
Yeah. I think I'm going to give a couple seconds of how the film did it. And then I'm going to give you a couple seconds of what the real speech, luckily, that Dr. William Luther Pierce recorded for us back when it was given at the National Alliance Convention.
My friends and family, we're here with you today because we want you to join us on a mission, putting words into action. Our brotherhood has broken the chains of Jewish thought and parasitical usury.
The signs of awakening are sprouting up across the Northwest, and no more so than amongst the two-fisted farmers and ranchers, a class of our people who have been hit especially hard by the filthy, lying Jews and their parasitical usury system.
We've stood tall against the coloreds who have soured our lands. We, these yeoman farmers, are eating, breathing, sleeping, and growing together. They've become one mind, one body, one race, one army.
Out of the valleys, out of the fields, poured the Aryan yeoman horde, their flag to April's breeze unfurled. Thence the Aryan farmers came and removed the Jew forever.
We're facing the extermination of our history, of our very way of life. Will you sit back and allow the nation that our forefathers discovered, conquered, and died for be eradicated, or will you stand up like men and fight to survive? Kinsman duty calls. It is time to take the future all your families deserve.
So stand up like men and drive the enemy into the sea. Stand up like men and swear a sacred oath upon the green graves of our sires that you will reclaim what our forefathers discovered, explored, conquered, settled, built, and died for. Stand up like men and reclaim our soil. Kinsmen, arise. Look towards the stars and proclaim our destiny.
In Medellin Falls, we have a saying,
defeat never, victory forever. Thank you.
In the film, I think, as you mentioned before, it's Butler doing the speech at, I guess, the National Alliance conference, although there is an emblem also of the Aryan nations behind him, I think.
It's a bit confusing. I think they're trying
it says above the stage, it says National Alliance Convention.
But at this time, I don't, the relationship between Pierce and Dick, but I don't remember when they were on the outs with each other or when they were friends. But I don't remember this time being one of those friendly times. So it is a little bit out of place to see the Aryan nations taking over the National Alliance Conference, but who cares? It's the same shit.
I mean, they had like on, I mean, I'm sure you're right about the particular time in history of their relationship, but like National Alliance did have like all kinds of guests at their conferences from other groups and so on. So that's like, it seems like possible. But then he's giving a speech and then Matthews interrupts him and kind of continues this theme of taking over, Nazism from Richard Butler, I guess, because he really impresses all the gathered people there.
Yeah.
Filthy.
Yeah. But again, the film is creating this stupid tension between Bob Matthews and Dick, but immediately after showing the Seattle heist, which Aryan Nations got $40,000 from.
Yes.
And like $40,000 of like 80s money.
Yeah. You can do so much coke in the 80s with that money.
Then we finally get like that Jude Law finally starts taking the Turner Diaries seriously. There's a whole scene there with like
wait, meaning that he recognizes the linkage, right? But not the content. He doesn't become a Nazi, I guess is what I'm saying. Right.
But he realizes that the Turner Diaries is like a dangerous text.
And it's pulling things together. You know, he and Jamie recognize that they're following a program. They call it a 6-step program, in fact.
Is this also where where he goes to like Jamie's house?
Yes.
And
fucks up
it's
the
just
kid's
like
birthday.
Exactly what you said, Ray. Like this useless, cop life drama bullshit where like the job is getting in the way of the family.
Yeah.
Like it's so cliche and
the women's intuition
ridiculous
thing in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I mean, like it would that would make sense. Like if or it would. I think would be okay if they for once portrayed with like what's actually fucked up about being a cop. Like, and if that's like, okay, you're either like a violent, like kind of psycho with authoritarian, like fascist psychology type of person, or like you're not. And then the reality of that job is getting to you and you're being like a depressive alcoholic because you're a cop.
Did
but
you
like
see... Sorry, Ray, did you ever see Bad Lieutenant, but the Nicolas Cage, the Werner Herzog version?
I didn't see that version.
I feel like that might satisfy your itch a bit more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty classic Nick Cage.
Yeah, but this is just the classic, like the job. You can bring in the job to work and like, I don't like that. He has a family and don't you have you're alienated from your family. I wonder why, Jude Law.
Yeah. But they're never like have a problem with their own role at that job. They have the problem.
No, it's only because they're taking they're so serious about they're doing the right thing.
And I think there are like cops who are like not psychos, just like whatever, and who have like psychological problems because they're cops because of what it means to be a cop. Like because they're kind of outside of most society on the other side,
Sure.
And I guess a lot of people who are not psychotic have a problem with that. And I
have a
imagine
problem of viewing the rest of society as enemies.
Yes.
It's like enemy combatants.
And that's and I think maybe that's where this cliche in movie portrayals comes from, that you have a lot of cops who are, suicidal, alcoholic, and so on, but they never really address why is it so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so neither does this film. Yeah. But like after this scene is like where Jude Law he sees the Turner Diaries at Jamie's house and like picks it up and it's like, whoa, what's this?
Yeah,
and then Jamie's like, oh, I didn't think you'd take it seriously. It's what these guys are reading or whatever.
Yeah, I would.
And he tells him about the Day of the Rope.
Well, he says that it ends in step 6, the Day of the Rope, which is actually in the middle of the book. The end of the book is the nuking of the White House, but people
actually,
but they show a picture
in the Turner Diaries.
Yes, exactly. As I was saying that, I didn't realize it, but I was pushing up my glasses with my finger. That's not a joke. I actually did that. So,
my man,
fair point. Touche, Boris. We did say we're not going to do that. I'm sorry, but that's my book. My favorite. You know that. I take it seriously, much like Jude Law and his character here. So, I was again really frustrated at this point that Zilla's mom was not showing up. I was thinking all this time, like any minute now, because they weren't shy about giving a new character here and there, like his FBI partner who kind of appears out of nowhere, right? The what's her name? But instead,
but if you want a disturbing family drama aspect, Zilla's mom is perfect because it's.
But they don't want
she is like of course not.
They had a loving family. He didn't even read.
I'm sure Zilla had a loving family too. Her mom was just a Nazi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was. They had a family relationship, just a demented Nazi family.
I can't imagine it was great.
That's
I just have a
quite
hard
disturbing.
time. Yeah. Okay.
Because what we saw some of these Nazi movies where like they show like the wife, like the mother making like the swastika birthday cakes and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Well, that's the shit I wanted to see. Like they weren't even reading the kid the worst part of the Turner Diaries. It was just like the whatever, some random generic sentences. You don't get the sense that you don't fear for the family. like I think you could have if somebody was trying to make a different point here. You know, it's just like a family. They just happen to be ethnically white nationalists because of their heritage or whatever. So they also say their plan is to assassinate the president. I don't remember that being an order thing. In fact, if I recall, the FBI didn't like stop any grand plots. They just sort of stopped the ongoing, relatively successful activities of the order, right?
Yeah.
All right. So in this movie, they're building something up. They're like, step 6 is coming. They're telling it to the other cops. The cops are like, what do you mean? These guys are like terrorists? And then everybody's like, yeah, they're fucking terrorists. And yelling. Everybody's yelling all the time from now on. Whenever someone's like, oh, we found them in this town, somebody starts screaming, then why the fuck aren't we in that town? And it's just constantly like this. The energy's up to like 12 throughout the rest of this film at this point.
But ATF traced the serial number to a store in Missoula.
Where?
And a name. Missoula.
Missoula?
Yeah.
Do you know how far Missoula is from here?
Well, 2.5 hours.
So why the fuck are we fucking waiting?
I made the call.
Why isn't anybody driving to Missoula, huh? Tell me, Mr. FBI.
Hey.
Jesus. And you're the fucking FBI!
And of course, the order itself is building to the murder of Alan Berg, which is, of course, for them, step 5, which is like killing a Jew or something, right?
Yeah, something like this. Yeah.
I thought it was level. I thought they called them levels.
Maybe it was levels. No, steps, I think.
No, it's step in the it's a step in the movie, but I think I thought in real life they called them level. Like this is level 5.
Okay. Okay, because that makes more sense. So this was like an internal it's less like what the Turner Diaries is telling them to do. This is a reference more to the order's internal clock or whatever they set themselves.
Yeah.
All right. That would have been nice to see, but okay, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to push my glasses up again. Don't comment.
And the lead up to the killing of Alan Berg is done through a montage of, again, more of Alan Berg's like radio commentary.
Right.
And it's done in this montage of them prepping. So like Nazis, firing automatic weapons at targets that have Stars of David on them. And like.
Yeah. And also, as they were doing that montage, I don't know if you noticed, but they were showing pictures supposedly of Jewish people they didn't like, right? As a way to like show us that they're planning something terrible. Key among those pictures was a picture of Henry Kissinger, which I really think sends the wrong message, unless you're really trying to please some Nazis who want to be seen as like, having a good argument or something. Like, why would they pick out was he a big deal to them? Is that why?
I don't remember if Kissinger was on their hit list.
Because he's featured in the film. And you wonder why they pick like a war criminal to be like, you know what I mean? Why him?
Well, they wanted to kill a Rothschild. I know that. They had like some plan to bomb some Rothschilds at some event in Seattle or something like that never ended up happening. I don't think that Kissinger was on their hit list. Who knows?
Do you see why that's like a confusing message for a film that's supposed to be anti the order? Is to pick like, a globally hated war criminal as their target.
Yeah.
And then they also, I gotta say, like, I noticed, and I don't, I don't hate the choice, but I wonder why it was made. I don't think anybody speaks the N-word in this film. There's examples of it written.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone ever says it out loud.
They say the K word.
They do.
In fact, the film opens with it. Basically.
They also, but they say the word spook instead of the usual fare. And I have also been kind of wondering. At first, I thought, okay, this is like people don't want to hear it, they don't want to say it, whatever. It's ugly. Okay, I don't know. That was my first thought. But then I was thinking, like, as the movie went on, are they just trying to? I mean, I feel like they're toning down the Nazi aspects. They show us a visual montage when they want to show us that part of them, but they spare us most of their worst rhetoric.
Well, and interestingly, they focus mostly on their anti-Semitism and not their anti-Black racism, or famously also their anti-Latino racism, and them going in brownface. To Spokane, right?
Yes, true, that too. Although I'm kind of on the fence, maybe not even. Maybe I'm even a little grateful that since this movie, in my mind, and you've told me before, I think we started, that MAGA people did not like this film, but I actually imagine that like people who love
they didn't
National
like this movie because of the very end where they mentioned January 6th. But in fact, but go on.
But just because I started to watch this again as as I imagine a Nazi would. I was very grateful they didn't say Zog at all or talk about the Zionist occupational government and stuff like that, especially because a lot of this other film, a lot of the stuff that you see about the order in this film and what you do hear from them in this film is not really to the right of pretty popular general audience YouTube channels right now. So I started to get really angry at the film from this point, maybe on, in that like continuously we're given now an FBI that appears obsessed and foreign and from somewhere else. And then we continuously have a Bob that appears like he's like Jesus who sees through time somehow. He looks through people. He sort of floats from a natural scene to violent military scene. He's a native warrior of the land. And then I feel like ultimately we ended up with a very pro Bob film by the end of it. But
yeah, in a way, the film portrays him as being successful in what he wanted in some way.
Right.
And
which in some ways he
nobly.
was. That's true. But they give him this kind of noble quality in his like relationship to the FBI guy, and that like they don't kill each other.
They see each other
to the very end. Just as like
yes,
but successful in a way that's like kind of crazy, like historically almost. Like he sees the future. He sacrifices himself because he knows that he will be a martyr, and this will, and especially with the implication that like somehow what he wanted is realizing in the current time.
I mean, they give him this kind of like worthy adversary treatment.
Yeah. That's
in
our
some
character,
bizarre
right?
way.
That's Jude Law. I think Jude Law is the worthy adversary, and Bob is the agent of history in this movie. And I think that on top of that, I wanted to say what Ray was saying. Oh, that from this point on in the film, the FBI appear as increasingly unhinged as well. So, for instance, like the his superior busts into Debbie's house while she's sitting at her kitchen table, just being like a typical trad wife. I mean, maybe I'm a little bit ahead, not by much though. But it's one of these examples of like of a over the top sort of aggressively personal reaction from the FBI in the sort of local or native space of these people. It's felt again like the cops coming in to bust, and I think maybe in like the ideological prism of the movie, it's like them becoming obsessed with their, it becomes like
catching
a white whale
these guys. But if you're looking at it from the perspective of like a white nationalist or your average run of the mill right winger, now it does look like this invasion of the federal government over
of
like the white yeomanry's. Yeah, the woke FBI's invasion of like the white yeomanry space.
Yeah.
So like one thing that we just have to mention is that, the scene that you were talking about, Fritz, happens after they kill Alan Berg.
Right.
And the killing of Alan Berg, the depiction of it is extremely accurate to how it actually went down.
Yeah.
This is like a very well documented murder in that like David Lane and Bruce Pierce, and I guess somebody else was Yarborough there.
I think so. Yeah.
Lane
was the driver.
Right. And they follow Berg back from work. They follow him from leaving the radio station, going to his house, and they shoot him with like, they really like just let out with automatic weapons on him while he's like in his driveway of his home.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty, I guess, accurate portrayal of how all that went down. And then the FBI, of course, freaks out. But before that, Bob Matthews celebrates at a cookout with like the rest of, the Nazis there, just showing this kind of contrast between, the brutal murder and the way that like the order treats this as like, a family event where Bob's like, teaching his adopted son to like shoot bottles and stuff like that. And you can see a little bit of like maybe not suspicion from Debbie, like she's finally starting to see that maybe something's not right, and she's looking down at Bob and their son.
Yeah, you can see her starting to split off from him. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but that was also going on. Was that part of the original lore, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, they were having some issues there as well.
Understandably.
And then, Debbie meets Zilla in this awkward meeting.
Yes. Yeah, Zilla's, all pregnant in the truck, and Debbie
confronts Bob, and she's like, do you, people talk? Is this your kid? And
yeah. And then
Bob lies to her.
I think this is the most unsympathetic they portrayed Bob in a way, because here we see him as a very oppressive personality to Debbie, where you can watch him gaslighting her in this devious way, and we're meant to see that. But it doesn't. It's another one of those little threads that they don't really keep with. Yeah. It doesn't ultimately matter plot wise. It's just
it's just like a box that they check to continue going down.
Yeah.
And so now, like, the hammer is starting to come down on Bob. They make the connection. The feds make the connection to David Lane. They go to David Lane's parents' house, who seem like, pretty well off in some suburb somewhere.
Yeah, upper middle class, old white people.
They give up the name of Bob Matthews and his compound in Medellin Falls, Washington, which they previously didn't have. So now they have all this information, and now the story starts to kind of move pretty quickly towards the, dramatic conclusion.
Importantly, his family, David Lane's family, I was curious to know how they're going to present them. And they present them as being sad about their son's choices. I don't know enough about David Lane to know whether or not that's true, but the narrative here is definitely like good boys gone a little too far kind of vibe that I feel like all these characters in the order sort of emanate that vibe.
Yeah, they're all given that treatment, not as like,
good lost boy.
Yeah. Which is, whatever, the media's treatment of the school shooter or whatever, right? Like, or, whatever, of like,
well, those are often boys.
White criminality in general.
These are like full ass men here.
Yeah, no, but it's just the way they treat white criminality in general,
right?
Which is like, they were good guys who made a mistake or whatever.
Yeah.
And this is, David Lane we're talking about. But
Bob Matthews, shit.
And Bob Matthews, yeah. And so now they show the main Brinks heist.
Yes.
Which again seems relatively accurate to how it went down, although
except there is a casualty that didn't occur. That is an interesting choice that they made here, which is of the bystander who is seeing this armored heist truck go down. And because I guess this bystander is completely insane and needed to shoot somebody, he saw a perfectly good reason to do so, got out of his car, started firing, and got shot to death. As I recall, there were no casualties in that heist. Full stop, right? Except for Bob Matthews' gun.
Right. I think, yes.
In fact, from this point on, we'll see the order in multiple violent conflicts with the police and gun battles where the police take casualties. Again, didn't happen. I think the only injury a police took in this entire order story in real life was like a shot to the foot, maybe.
There were a lot of shootouts, but yeah, with minimal injuries and casualties or whatever.
So if you as the viewer were not moved enough by the fact that this was a fascist group that was armed and ready to do Nazi shit, the movie seems to rely on the revenge story picking up whatever slack they think the viewer doesn't yet have tightened up, and that worries me a bit, that they had to make a whole look how many police they're shooting, which isn't the thing that happened. A bunch of police didn't get killed, and they didn't certainly get it wasn't they weren't attacking and murdering police, but that's somehow part of this. I don't know why. I feel like it was completely unnecessary unless you wanted to say, here's the real point I'm really trying to make you feel, which is not to be worried about the Nazi shit, but to be worried about the law and order shit. I can't think of what else.
And of course, like after the Brinks robbery, we get this another completely unnecessary breakdown of what like Jude Law's brooding character is all about and how he worked organized crime and bodies and this and that and undercover whatever. I didn't even care about that part, to be honest. It was just like you said, Ray, just annoying, unnecessary like character development for this Fed that we're supposed to love or feel like he's like a conflicted dark character.
Yeah.
They get Torres to flip in jail, which is more or less true, except that it happened in Philly.
And also, he's taking the heat for Bob's gun, I think, in the film.
Right. Instead of getting caught with like the currency and other stuff.
Right.
But like it's Torres goes back. They let him go to lead the feds to Bob Matthews and crew, and there's like a big shootout at this motel, in which Deputy Jamie dies.
A perfect example of what I'm talking about. It didn't happen. It wasn't necessary. And it's there to kick off another sort of reason to be invested in the movie.
Right. And then Jude Law probably feels bad because he had that conversation with his wife who was like, you're bringing the job home. And now poor, she's the children are.
It's pointless.
2 children are left fatherless.
They're trying to give us yet another cop film in a cop film we're already watching that's full of cop films. There's another one. This is the one you saw where the guy has the family, whatever, Yeah.
You
got it. It is pointless. It doesn't actually happen. In reality, that whole hotel scene was not a shootout. There may have been a shot exchange. I think there was two shots exchanged.
There were some shots exchanged,
Bob
but
fucked up his
wasn't
hand
like this.
in that one, I think, right? Yeah, Bob got it. I think he took like buckshot to the hand or something. But beyond that, didn't look like this. And but fine, whatever. You need to have a shootout. It's an American movie. I get it. The other 2 Order movies did the same thing. No shade there. But okay. Brinks armed truck robbery. That's when his boss, the lady who's his superior, busts into Debbie's house, grabs her by the wrist, like arrests her. They take the kid away in the scene. It's a very unsympathetic scene of the FBI. They bust into this woman's house while she's at the kitchen table at the hearth of her home, her white yeoman home, and they take away a child that should be on a table surrounded by other men. So it's all fucked up. So we make it to the infamous Whidbey Island standoff. It's given Waco. It's given John Wick.
Yeah, and this was Bob Matthews holed up in a house. It shows him typing up his declaration of war.
Yeah,
which
he did do there. Yeah.
And like ends with saying like the one thing I know that never dies is the fame of a dead man's deeds, which is for sure going to be sampled by some Nazi band.
Yes.
At some point.
Yes, indeed. Well, the first person to sample that I know of from this declaration of war was David Mamet for his Aryan Army or whatever the fuck he was making there.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So 1984, Whidbey Island. Bob Matthews gets killed in a fiery demise in a hail of gunfire.
Yep.
But in this version, Jude Law determined to catch Bob Matthews alive, maybe?
Hold up, because first they send in like a full unit of like special forces, police, all kitted out and ready to go. And Bob Matthews up on the second floor just starts shooting them down with some like machine gun, I guess. I can't really see what he has, but he's like wiping them out. I mean, it's very visually speaking, Bob Matthews is definitively the hero of this scene. Like he is against overwhelming odds, armored invaders into his home. He stands above them, right? Which I think is also important, in the room above, and begins raining hell down upon them, forcing them all to retreat. At which point the fire continues to catch. And then, Jude Law has his third I respect your game scene.
Yeah. Where he rushes into the burning building to, I guess, catch him alive?
But that's the idea. He's like, it's enough, Bob. It's over.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have each other dead to rights.
It's completely on fire. There's no way he's ever getting out of this. And they
it's really dumb.
Yeah, they meet eyes, and then whatever. Bob Matthews ends up firing his gun at Jude Law, but basically to kind of get him out of the building in some way.
I didn't even see that part, man. I just saw them they were pointing guns at each other. They both put them down and have a little conversation in the midst of this burning inferno. And then eventually Jude turns around and leaves the buck to his natural habitat, a burning hellfire. And then what we see, and this is where I got super excited, folks, because we see Bob Bob Matthews don his gas mask and take a defensive position within the floor. Now, listen, fellas, not the first time we've seen this interpretation of the end of Bob Matthews. First time, of course, being the Stormfront fan fiction, where that saves his life, and he continues to Bob Matthews in this fantasy Nazi fiction that we ended up gaming. But it's happening right here, guys.
Yeah, I completely forgot about us doing that. It's great. Now, yeah.
If there wasn't already a group that was called The Order 2, I would have gone back and renamed that episode The Order 2. Because it is the clear official sequel of this film.
So yeah, the film ends, and then we get the political message of the film. Basically, there's titles, intertitles after the film's done, and it does the typical like Bob Matthews died and blah blah blah.
Yeah,
Whidbey Island, David Lane, and
I got it up. Should I just read it?
Yes.
Okay. It says, well, but Boris. That's not how the movie ends exactly, because Jude Law, the frontiersman, returns to the frontier that he has now conquered. Yes, and lifts up his weapon once more at that same fucking elk or whatever from before. And then the scene, the movie cuts to black just before he pulls the trigger. So we don't know. For some reason, I don't know why they did this or what they're supposed to tell us. I think they're just going to leave us with like a feeling. But then it cuts to this card. Bob Matthews died in the siege on Whidbey Island December 8th, 1984. It would take nearly 2 years before the other surviving members of the Order were put behind bars. Bruce Pierce and David Lane were sentenced to a combined 300 years for their roles in Alan Berg's murder. Gary Yarborough received a total of 85 years in jail for assault weapons and racketeering charges. The Turner Diaries has been used as a blueprint for domestic terrorism for over 40 years, influencing events from the Oklahoma City bombing to the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, 2021. Gentlemen, this was news to me. The Capitol riots used the Turner Diaries as a fucking blueprint.
Yeah.
Don't
this
remember that
naturally, okay, is whatever. Maybe some people there thought it was Day of the Rope, but
well, the guys with the rope possibly, but they just wanted to hang Mike Pence. Day of the Rope's about race traitors, people.
And crucially, this like really triggered the MAGA people online who gave this film overwhelming negative reviews because of that, and pretty much only because of that. And one review that I saw that I thought was pretty funny was this guy being like, oh, there's too much politics, blah, blah, blah. Like, it was great up until the last 2 minutes. And this person who says that, like, it's incredibly offensive to every non-white racist person who voted for Trump, and there's a lot of us, but also historically untrue. There's no connection between the Turner Diaries and J6. J6 was generally unplanned. But the funniest part of it is that he says, also in hindsight, I do feel like they turned Matthews into a martyr-like character. He never gave up dying for what he believed in and was shown to be a principled and decent guy, or at least no better than the FBI guy who stood against what he deemed tyranny in defense of his race and country from his perspective. At points, ironically, I felt like this was more an ode to white supremacy than a scathing rebuke or a simple historical retelling. It sucks because as a movie it was spectacular, but I cannot in good conscience recommend it. So
I appreciate this review, I have to say. This is some right-wing dude being like, yo, this is a bit Nazi for me.
well, yeah, being like, yeah, if you were looking at this, if you're a right-winger watching this, you would probably be sympathetic to Bob Matthews and to, Dick Butt and to those characters in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have nothing. I have, no comments. He's right.
Yeah. And then the rest of the MAGA comments are all what you might expect, including a guy said that it was pro-CCP ideology, which is funny.
Wait, this was a communist movie, you're saying?
This is a communist movie.
Oh,
somehow.
Clearly.
Critics loved it for its leftist politics. It claims J6 was an insurrection. Blah, blah, blah. And yeah. But they're all kind of basing their critique on the last minute of the film or whatever instead of the rest of it, which, and none of them say, it doesn't really seem to imply that, like, Bob Matthews is a bad guy or whatever.
Yeah.
But like that one review is kind of very telling in that respect.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Overall, I would say it wasn't like an unwatchable film.
No, but I mean,
it's not particularly good either.
You've seen it before. You've seen it a few times.
It's not a good movie. It's like it's competently made, and it's like not boring to watch. But it's not a good movie.
It's not. And it shouldn't get 91% on Metacritic. Like that's reserved for like Zoolander levels. You know?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at it just for like, okay, does it show this kind of the development of the order and like what they did? Then yeah, sure. It's like, I guess, a relatively accurate portrayal of some of the activities of the order, but the things that it added and omitted make it, a kind of problematic portrayal.
For instance, the non-local
in
and class background
ways.
of Bob Matthews, right? That alone is a killer for order films that don't want to work with the order's own self-image, which again, this film does.
Yeah, because these are very much like he is like the white yeomanry of the land who's,
They say yeoman at least once. I think Dick Butt
They do.
Twice, I think
there we
they
go.
say. Yeah.
Well, they know about the yeoman at least.
Which is, we're saying because that was Bob Matthews' favorite term.
White yeomanry.
Yeah.
Massive Palouse.
Massive Palouse. I don't know. How do you think it stands up to the other order in film that we watched? I found it more watchable, honestly, just because it was,
I personally don't think it was
dull.
better than Betrayal. I feel like to me those are kind of neck and neck as far as like quality of a film in general goes, but kind of a ridiculous interpretation. In my mind, this movie is directly in between, yes, Betrayal or Betrayed, whichever one it was called, the Costa Gavras film.
Betrayed, yeah.
The Gavros film. But it's mixed between Betrayed, Imperium, Daniel Radcliffe, and The Outlaw Josie Wales, with some of these relationships between Bob and Jude Law.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, this was the one that was like most fun to watch, or at least boring.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's pretty. I mean, there's not a lot of stuff in it really. Like it's like I don't know what I mean, I know what it does badly and what it wants to do politically, but in terms of characters and so on, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
They're very archetypal, very the way
they
color
behave, and I think the Costa Gavras one, I think had some. I don't remember it very well, but it had some attempt of like some kind of a class analysis or something like that.
Yeah, but that was that was the order's class analysis that they chose, right? It was that this is the natural outcome of an oppressed yeomanry,
something like
whites.
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't even do that. Like it's, I don't know.
It's more cultural than you're right. Yeah, there was a little bit of class in the Costa Gavras film. In this one, it's purely law and order. And maybe
it's
culture, right?
It's mentioned how they don't have job. That's mentioned.
Yeah.
Well, that's the only thing. It doesn't really portray their life in any way.
Well, that and that they don't have jobs if we listen to Tony Torres because of, wokeness and inclusion and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I was a Nazi, I would really, I'd be, I don't know, I would feel seen. I would feel heard,
I mean, they portray them really like they portray them like kind of professional bank robbers, and like
it's done. It has the same kind of problem that a lot of these liberal films do, like like Civil War that we talked about too, right? It's so it has an ideological point, but it's determined not to make it very well. And so if you do, if you are sympathetic in some way or another to the order, you'll roll your eyes at a couple points in the film, but like overall, like, it works. And if you're not, and you sympathizing with the FBI character in the film, then you'll also come relatively satisfied.
There was one scene that kind of, but I was confused by it. That kind of counters this like professionalism that they portrayed in bank robbing. Is like early on, do they shoot one of them like in a car after they rob?
No, you're led to believe that it's a gun going off, but it's one of the die packs.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah, remember, he comes into Zilla's house and she's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And he's like covered in what looks like blood. And he goes, No, it's just a die pack.
I thought that he was lying to her, but yeah.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I think it was maybe a Pulp Fiction nod, a joke. I don't know, something. Speaking of Zilla, though, there was when Zilla has his baby, right? And she apologizes to him that it's not a boy. He is clearly unaffected by this. And this is an example of them sacrificing consistency to do something that seems crazy to me, which is to make Bob an okay dude. Because Bob is immediately like, "Oh, she's beautiful, I don't care." And he picks her up and he's very loving to her. But like, then why was Zilla worried? You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't because Bob is like, "You better make a boy," then why would she be like, "I'm so sorry"? And she was very quiet and scared, that it was a girl. But like,
well, I can imagine like I that doesn't seem unrealistic to me. I can imagine him being excited about having a son, and not in some kind of a way that she would feel threatened if she doesn't have a boy, but like that she thinks that he will be disappointed, and then he.
But this is a good. But that's a perfectly good place to build up on Bob's patriarchal elements that are also played down in the film throughout, right? Like these are slight things. They're small, like girls being allowed in the club during the initiation ceremony. But I also think like that would be a moment where you could play up, at least show that Bob is disappointed. You know what I mean? Like show something. But there's to me, they give up on these moments in order to emphasize that he's like a salt of the earth dude.
Yeah. I mean, I maybe I wouldn't do it like if I was making this film. I wouldn't do it in that such. I think that would be like a bit over the top. I think it makes sense to me that like he already prefers a boy. They don't need to make him like throw the baby out of the window.
Well, no. I mean, I'm talking about how many meaningful glances were given in this film. Like at least 10 minutes of this film are meaningful glances. That's where you put one guess, right there. That's what I'm saying. Just a meaningful glance.
Yeah, I think in general there's very little information in this film. About
there's some facts, I guess.
What his life is about.
I mean, like, I think that to be generous, maybe to the filmmakers who've they've read one of these books at least about the order that the film actually cites, Silent Brotherhood. I mean, like, Zilla would have reason to believe that, like, because she's also buying into the ideological project more than that's his like real ideological wife. As Deb, he married through the classifieds and like clearly wasn't into this. Into the politics so much. And like, she would know that in like romantic letters, love letters that he wrote to her, he wrote about like the importance of manhood and like,
standing
that
up like
shit.
A man, etc.
Standing up like a man. Like, I'm trying to pull up, I think I have. He writes stand up like men in his love letter too.
That's right. I remember that.
He says something like, oh yeah, here I have it.
Great.
When it became obvious that we were going to do more than just talk, most of the men started backing out and turning their backs to those of us who have retained our manhood and our Aryan pride. So be it. Sometimes in the dark of the night, I wish I was a normal man so I could enjoy life unhindered. But I know what future awaits our children unless I stand up like a man and fight. So, and then if some of us stand up and fight, then your two fine sons will have the future they deserve. They will be able to stand up like men and say, "I am white, I'm proud, I'm free." So, I mean, like this is what I want. Romantic letter he wrote, men shows up. Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4 sons, 5, 6. It was just like 6 times like the word man shows up in this, like
Okay, here's what I wish happened. I wish she was like, I'm sorry, it's not a boy. And he's just completely in denial. And it's like, well, his name's going to be Bobby Jr. Or he's going to be a savior of the white race. You know, he's completely never accepts it. That's what I would.
Yeah. I mean, I think we would make a very different film about the Order than this was. I'll give you that one.
Well, you know, if anybody wants to see what some of that might have looked like, you can go back to Arc, whatever the fuck it was, when we found out that he's a very RPGable character. So,
he is indeed.
So we don't even have to return to this film. We already wrote the sequel. And I expect
or Nazi already wrote the sequel and we gamed it out.
Well, there we go. That's true. Next step is film. Netflix will fund it. They'll fund anything about Nazis. All right. Any other final notes or impressions? I can't think of anything except to say that I guess I want to see Assassin's Creed the movie now and just see how it stacks up.
Yeah.
Gravitas wise.
No. This is a technically well-made bad film.
Yeah.
There we go.
Exactly.
There's your obituary. All right.
All right.
All right, guys. Well,
Happy
till
New
next
Year, everyone.
time. Happy New Year. See you later.
Bye.
I'm particularly encouraged by the success that Texas Klan leader Louis Beam has had in a beam-fisted truckers from a large truck stop at Rock Springs, Wyoming, with many of the truckers either joining on the spot or subscribing to the newsletter. Do it. In Meddling Falls, we have a saying, stand up like men, aroused filthy coming hard in a large truck stop at Rock Springs, Wyoming, like chickens on a June bug. Thank you, Lloyd. The task is not going to be easy, eating the trucker's massive Palouse. He's shown us it's growing, a living monument to masculinity. Thence, the Aryan farmers came in a large truck stop at Rock Springs, Wyoming. Take heart, kinsmen. Stand up like men. We must, it is our duty to take advantage of the American farmer.